It's like this is like the best bit for me, like getting to talk to people of color about this book, and yeah, listen to reactions from people of color. But yeah, but for me, that's about me. My name is Okechukwu Zelu. I wrote Here Again Now. It's my second novel. My first one was called The Private Joys of Nana Maloney. That came out in 2019, which seems 1,000 years ago now because it was just before the pandemic started. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here, and I'm just really grateful to you for inviting me along. So thank you, and thank you for making time for me.
Thank you for listening to let me slide into your DMs and actually answering, because yeah, definitely. But I was going to say as well, even though we've got people of colour in here, we also have some white people. I don't know if
Hi, white people.
Hi. But they've all made a commitment to anti-racism, and we're all just trying to figure this out together. So, but essentially I say that to say, just talk how you need to talk. We're not here for the white gays. Like, they get it, they know it. So just wanted to just put that out there on the real. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Brilliant. I can't wait. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, I've got 100 questions. I can just speak to you forever, but let me take it off me. Who would like to go first? Colleen, you're already off mute, so I'm assuming you got something to say.
No, I was just sharing with the group earlier, like how touched I was by the themes, and I related to just the whole growing up with the absent father. That was my experience, and the way it impacts your relationships with others. You know, that whole kind of just being with people that are unavailable. Like, I've done that, been there, got the t-shirt, got the wedding ring, got the divorce papers.
I've just got the tattoo, but yeah, you went all the way. Yeah.
So I think, yeah, on so many levels, like that, just to read that, just kind of, yeah, it's an issue. It's out there. It's something that affects our communities, and you know, it's something that I'd love to see change. But I think just reading that, and obviously from with the gay angle as well, just added another layer of difficulty in that. And I think for me, like, because I've got like I come from a Caribbean background, and I think the perception is that we've got that more kind of stereotypical broken kind of home kind of, you know, that's the view of the Caribbean type of family network. And so to read it obviously from an African perspective, like really opened my eyes as well. Like, even like going back to Nigeria and that experience with the uncle, there was just so much in it that was just it, and it was beautifully written. I was talking about the way the two men described each other in that way, and it was just really beautiful. And just thanks. I mean, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. That really means a lot to me to hear. And, you know, especially what you said about the stereotype of the broken family, really, that's something that I think is quite close to my heart as well. Like, I come from a broken family as well. And, we never called it that ourselves, but that's what we heard it as called, like outside of the family. And, you know, it was this, and the thing about that is people talk about like broken families, and they talk about them as though the people inside them are broken, but nobody talks about like the forces that break them, you know, the external forces that are at play. You know, broken families, when you're like labeled a broken family, it's like you're the wound and nobody thinks about the weapon. Nobody thinks about what is going on that caused that, you know, whether that's poverty or masculinity or mental health or whatever it might be. Nobody, I feel like that is something that I want to hear talked about more.
And that intersectionality, so like you speak about class, and you know, that kind of that pressure to be the best, that pressure to be the perfect child, because you have to be, because you know, you have to work twice as hard. And yeah, it kind of just really made me think about the pressure that I felt under as a child, to just be that perfect child that's gonna do all these things. And you know, I saw that in the character where he was just he just had to be different things to different people, and he couldn't always, because he was gay, and obviously his father had huge issues around that and couldn't quite understand. So yeah, there was so much in there that just transcended. I was just like, wow.
Oh.
Wow was a full sentence. I'm sure it is. I just really wanted to jump in. I mean, in another interview you did, I think it might have been a big issue, you talked about how this book is about families and how families can accept their queer children. And I've got 4 nephews from the ages of like 2 all the way up to 14, and none of them currently have said that they're gay or anything like that to me, but I'm always saying to them, especially to my oldest nephew who's 14, like, if you like girls or you like boys, you know, you can talk to me about it, because obviously I'm Nigerian as well, but I'm Yoruba, the better tribe, as you know.
You never told me that I was going to be disrespected in this way.
Sorry, you know, I just couldn't help myself.
DMs. You told me all about this Zoom meeting. I never heard anything about this disrespect. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
Forgive me. Please forgive me. And like, I've told the group, I've got 4 brothers, 4 Nigerian, very, I don't know what the word is, masculine, whatever that means, alpha male kind of brothers. So whenever I say it to my nephews, you know, if you ever think you're gonna be gay, I get cussed out all the time. Like, what do you mean? Like this, why are you gonna make them gay? And my 4-year-old nephew, he likes to wear dresses at nursery, which I think is hilarious. And it's even more hilarious because my brother gets really stressed about it. He almost had a fight with the manager at the nursery. He said, why let my son wear a dress? I'm like, he's just self-expression. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just self-expression. So essentially, I know within my family, I have homophobic, siblings. Some of them are, but I just wondered, just coming back to the question, just about if you could explain more about the reason why you want more maybe Black families to be able to accept their queer children, basically.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is one of the things that I'm really passionate about is this idea that, like, yes, absolutely, like dismantling patriarchy is really important for women and for queer people, for queer women, for all, you know, for Black people, it's because it's all connected. But also it's really important for straight people, straight men. You know, what your sort of anecdote there with your brothers and your nephews, that I find so interesting and so relevant and so true, because, you know, I'm a gay Black man. I'm absolutely going to fight for queer Black people and advocate for queer Black people. But also, I think it's really important that when we talk about liberating queer people, we're talking about liberating everybody. You know, actually, these kind of restrictions and strictures that we place on queer people are strictures that straight people also place on themselves. And I'm not really sure it makes them happy. I'm not really sure it benefits anybody. You know, in this novel, Chibike, he is a straight man. He's followed all the rules. He's fallen in love with a woman. He's married her. He's had a kid, and he's still not happy. You know, he's just because you follow all those rules, you might be sacrificing things, you might be hiding parts of yourself, you might be cutting off parts of yourself, you might be acting 24/7, but then what do you actually get out of that? And so as much as I want it to be about, this book is about and for queer people of color, but it's also about and for everybody, right? So, and then especially when I'm talking about, you know, queer kids, especially like queer Black kids, queer kids of color, my God, like, you know, I think we all know what it's like to not have the acceptance and the love that you deserve and that you are entitled to and that you really need. And so with this book, I kind of wanted to do something almost kind of restorative a little bit. You know, I wanted to, when I think of like the books that I loved, that in which I saw myself represented, which when I was growing up are very few, when I think of things like White Teeth or Purple Hibiscus, or, you know, like, I feel so grateful towards those books because I feel like they gave me something that I was missing, that I needed, that I didn't really have in my day-to-day life, certainly not outside the family home. And I want to I think that's because a book, a story that chimes with you can really make you, can almost kind of give you a little bit of something that you've been missing, whether that's representation or attention or companionship. And I wanted to do that with this book. So I think that even if, yeah, absolutely, books can be nourishment. I completely agree. And I think that, you know, my hope for this book, well, one of my hopes for this book is that queer people of colour who've suffered that rejection, who read this story can feel like, okay, at least it's possible, at least for like 300 pages, I can experience what it's like to not have that rejection or to have that healed, for like, and for queer parents, like this not for parents of queer kids, like this novel says again and again that, one of the barriers to accepting queer kids is this kind of fake idea that it just isn't something that we do. I don't know about Yoruba culture, but certainly in Igbo culture, a lot of the time when it's more traditional, you get this kind of, we just don't do that, when it comes to things about like queerness or, anything that's kind of non-traditional. It's like, oh no, we just don't do that. We just don't do that. It's just not done. And that kind of perpetuates the narrative that therefore it can't be done. And I really wanted to break that down, because actually that only exists, that false narrative only exists within a culture of silence where none of us talk about these kind of prohibited experiences. And if you can break that down, if you can find words for the feelings that you're not supposed to have, but you obviously do, if you can find a way to communicate these experiences that we've all had, like that, I think is such a hugely important and healing thing. Like, again, to go back to the book, Chibike, again, he's a straight man, he married a woman, he had a child with a woman, he did all the things he's supposed to do, but he's still not living in a world that's entirely straight and heteronormative. Like, he's had this uncle of his who is gay. He's had, it's like when people say, oh, I've never met a gay person, when actually you just maybe never known that you've met them, or you've never had a positive relationship with one, or a close relationship with one maybe that you know of. But that doesn't mean that you're living in this kind of like black and white world where everybody obeys the rules that you impose on yourself and the people around you. Actually, all of us live in this very multicolored, very variegated world. And I think we're all better off when we acknowledge that and we nourish that.
Thank you so much. So beautifully put. Me and my dad had a conversation, and he said that, I've realised that the previous generations were all about silence and secrets. And this new generation is actually more about just living your truth and being what you are. Do you know what I mean? I don't think my dad's progressive enough in relation to sexuality. I hope he gets there eventually, but just even like with punishment of kids, like beating his kids, like he used to hit us with like brooms and sticks as just standard, isn't it? But now looking at his grandkids, he would never, like, I will never hit them. He's think I've learned and evolved. And I've said, Dad, if you can learn and evolve in how you discipline a child, you can learn and evolve and accept your children regardless of what their sexuality may be,
Yeah, and that is so true. I used to teach secondary school, I'm a lecturer now, but one of the things that they teach you in secondary schools, especially when, like I was, you're working in kind of communities that are deprived and have been given, disadvantaged, when you're working with disadvantaged kids, what they tell you is you might be working with, say you're working with a kid who is like 12 years old and doesn't know how to read. You might not be able to teach that kid to be like getting top grades in a year. You might not be able to do that, but what you may be able to do is make that kid happy at school, give that kid a positive experience at school, and then maybe their kids will have that benefit from that, and their kids, and so on. And I'm really interested in this idea that actually we often think about learning as something that has to take place within quite a short amount of time. And sometimes the reasons for those are good. We want the people in our lives to be able to progress and to be better so that we can get what we deserve from them. And sometimes when that doesn't happen, it's really sad and really tragic even. But also, learning can take time. And just because it doesn't happen within the time that you want or need it to, doesn't mean that that person isn't going to get there. So I wanted to make room for that.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it out to anybody else that has questions.
Hi there.
Hi.
You're such a beautiful writer, and from hearing you speak, it's like I could just listen to you speaking all day. But I wrote down a few quotes that I really loved, and one of them was, where was a place where they could be Black and gay and safe? And I found that quote so striking, and it highlighted the importance of intersectionality and not just looking at Black people or gay people in separate kind of boxes. And I really love the way that you kind of weaved intersectionality throughout the book, because obviously the main topics were of being Black and being gay, but toxic masculinity was throughout the book. And although it's not necessarily a feminist book, you even had the quotes around, women denied so much were given this when they needed it, in terms of women being able to just cry and show our emotions. And I think that is something that maybe women take for granted, because we forget how difficult it is for men to be able to do that, in terms of societal pressures of men being taught that it's not okay to cry and it's not okay to talk about mental health and feelings. And I think that's changing a lot, and it's quite a topical topic in the men in my life who have been talking to me about, you know, toxic masculinity and stuff. But I just want to say that I really loved how many different topics you touched on. And I guess my question was around the quote that you repeated throughout the book. And it wasn't exactly the same each time, but it was around, could there be more than distance and sex between men? So as a reader, I read it as, you know, it was repeated throughout the book, and each time you kind of learned more about what you meant by that. But I'd be really interested to hear, when you wrote it, like what impact you wanted to have from repeating that throughout the book.
Yeah, so thank you so much for picking up on that. The novel is obviously, it's about second chances, and it's about, you know, recurrences, and, you know, we get this idea of reincarnation from like the Igbo traditional beliefs that inspired the film at the start of the novel. And that was part of why I wanted to have that kind of recurring phrase. It's also kind of a nod to Zora Neale Hurston, whose Their Eyes Are Watching God I just absolutely love. And we get in that book the reference to the pear tree that keeps coming back and kind of reminds us about where Janie's at in her life, and kind of makes us kind of helps us kind of plot the kind of her state of mind and her state of heart. And with that phrase, I guess I wanted to remind the reader that there is always this question in men's minds that I think when it comes to any relationship that you have, even any kind of microscopic show of affection or anything, it's always you're having to kind of balance this binary of sex and distance, and how much of one or the other are you going to have in this. And it's this idea that distance is safe and sex is dangerous, and that there is, you know, you can have like things, you know, even things which are like a hug that lasts slightly too long, or a hug period can be kind of taking too much from like the sex column and making it something dangerous, when actually, if we remove those blinkers, we can see things in a much more accurate and nuanced, complex way. And so for these characters, especially Chibike, this idea of like, is it sex or is it distance? For him, it's about realizing that A, it doesn't have to be that binary. You don't have to think of things in such a narrow way. And B, the idea of what you think of as sex is actually intimacy, is actually physical and emotional closeness to another human being, to another man. That is something that is really nourishing for you when you start to take those barriers down. And for me, the novel is kind of, it's about the two characters, you know, it's about Akene and Achike and Chibike. Obviously, it's about the three of them. But when it comes to Akene and Chibike, these two characters who form this relationship in the second half of the novel, it's much more about the journey of one of them than the other. One of my favorite novels is Sense and Sensibility. And one of the things about that is that you have these two sisters, Marianne and Eleanor, who are both, you know, Eleanor's this kind of very restrained character who is, she's got control over her emotions, and she knows when to kind of manage her emotions. And Marianne is much more kind of like, much more of a free spirit, I guess. And the novel is very much the journey of both of them, but Marianne's journey is the one where she's kind of learning to, I guess, be herself in a way that is like advantageous to her in the time. It's quite a complex novel, but what I was trying to do with this novel, with Here Again Now, is a similar sort of thing, in that when I'm talking about a journey for my characters, for a queer character who has been really mistreated, and for a straight character who, yes, has been a victim, but is also been really quite brutal to his child, their journeys are always going to be different. And I really didn't want this to be a novel that was about like a queer character like apologizing for being queer, or like taming his queerness, or like hemming it in. I wanted it to be a novel in which both of them kind of move towards queerness. If we think of queerness as this thing that is like, that has a lot to teach straight society and straight societal norms, you know, I wanted them to both move towards a queerness that is open and loving and safe and healing. And so this kind of repetition of that phrase, can there be more than sex and distance between men? That is that question I think is always in men's minds, and always reminding us of the fact that they're on that journey, and that they're just a little bit further along each time that phrase is repeated.
Amazing, thank you.
Thank you.
Sabi, I know you had some questions.
Hi, thank you so much. Again, just echoing what everyone said so far. I mean, the book was just transportive in so many ways. And I just feel like the narrative and the dialogue between characters and the depth of those relationships and the complexity and the grace of which you were able to convey that through your writing was just so incredible. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing this book with the world. Bit cheesy, but yeah, seriously, thank you.
No, thank you.
Another theme that I found quite interesting was illness and the articulation of illness. And I really found, we talked about migraines in particular, very sort of accurate. I've only ever had one migraine myself, but I just wondered, yeah, from your perspective, obviously, it wasn't obviously just the migraines, it was also the tragic end of, yeah, you know, the character in terms of the, yeah, like the sudden death, but then it's also linked with the brain. So I just wondered from your perspective, what was, I guess, the thinking around that? Did you want to have a bit more visibility around migraines, for instance? And yeah, because personally, I feel like there's a lot of power in terms of the visibility of both, like, you know, queerness, identity, but also medical illness and disability as well. So yeah, I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I guess there are a couple of things I'm trying to do with that. I mean, I also suffer from migraines, so that's probably the most autobiographical bit of the novel, in that I do get migraines. It's a massive pain, and I've been having them since I was a kid. And migraines are a funny thing, because depending on how bad they are for you, they can be really debilitating. Mine are like manageable, but some people get them for like days and days and days. And the thing is, you never quite know when one is coming, so it's always this kind of like lurking presence in your life. You know, if you accidentally have like caffeine or cheese or like red wine or whatever it is, are you going to have to like take the day off work? And you know, what else is going to have to shift? And it's a really strange thing. And certainly if you have them as a child for the first time, it's really strange because you don't always know what's happening. And I guess I was trying to build into that the fact that like the body is this really unpredictable thing. You know, much of this novel is about the heart and the mind, and it's about conversations that characters are having with each other about their feelings and thoughts, or not having with each other about their feelings and thoughts. And I also wanted to ground it in the fact that we live in our bodies, you know, and that those bodies affect the way that we experience life, whether that is because of skin color or because of illness or whatever it might be. And so for Achike, I wanted to kind of build in the fact that, you know, this novel is full of surprises for characters, in that they do things that they're not expecting themselves to be able to do, that they never would have anticipated themselves doing. But I didn't want all those surprises to be good, and I don't think it would be realistic for those surprises to be good. I think sometimes our bodies let us down. I think sometimes, certainly when it comes to addiction, which TBK is suffering from, our bodies can be a reminder of the traumas that we've experienced, and perhaps of the fact that we haven't, in a non-physical sense, been healed or offered healing from that trauma. So I wanted to kind of make it, I guess when I was trying to articulate, when I was building in the migraines and the addiction, the kind of that feeling of illness, I was trying to like remind us that not all of the surprises that life throws at us are good ones. And that experience of kind of researching the character who dies and the way that he dies, that was probably some of the most intense research I did for this book. And I spoke to a doctor like several times to like check and double check and explore and make sure I understood everything properly about exactly how this person would die. And that was one of the really interesting things for me, because as sad as it was, I was also learning a lot. And one of the things that the doctor said to me was that the way that this character dies, can I spoil it? Has everyone read it? Am I allowed to spoil it? Yeah. And the way that Achike dies with this brain hemorrhage is one of the few ways that doctors still can't really do anything about. If you come into, what I was told is that if you come into A&E with that kind of brain hemorrhage, it's one of the few things that doctors will not really be able to like help you with. Like a lot of things nowadays, medicine has progressed so far, and you know, technology and things are a lot better than they were say 100 years ago. But for this one thing, if your body lets you down in this way, which can happen for no reason of your own, it's nothing to do with, you know, choices that you've made, it's beyond our control. If that happens to you, that might be it. And I thought, actually that really fits with the story that I'm trying to tell here. Because I did have to this is one of the grim things about this book. I did have to kind of game out how this character was going to die. I did have to kind of, again, talk to this doctor several times about, okay, could he die like this? No, that wouldn't quite work. Could he die like this? No, that wouldn't quite work. And so when I settled on this, it kind of like, it just seemed to fit really well with what I was trying to say.
I just wanted to piggyback on that because that was the bit that I found the hardest to read. Some of you may know, but others may not know. But my brother, literally almost a year to the day to today, he had a brain hemorrhage. And literally everything he said in that book about, look at his age, he was 33. He does half marathons. He's a vegan. He got married in his 20s. He's got a child. So we've always said he's the boring brother, innit? Do you know what I mean? He doesn't do anything interesting. He doesn't go rave, he don't smoke, he don't drink. And he just dropped down one day and he'd had a brain hemorrhage. And minutes before he had that, he was on the phone to his wife and he was saying, I've got this really bad headache. I can't see. He was vomiting down the phone, and just thank God she was on the phone to him, because she wasn't on the phone to him, he would have been dead basically. And, you know, he's still in hospital now, a year on. It's looking like he's going to have permanent paralysis. And it's been a lot for my family, basically, and a lot to like go through. But one thing this book that segment gave me was hope. I'm like, he could have died. He really could have died. Like, he was in a coma for 3 months. Like, and the doctors were kind of just like, we just got to see what happens. His brain swelling, we might have to cut open his skull. If his brain's, you know, overswells, he may end up in a vegetable state. And it was very like a helpless situation. And like I said, he's still in hospital now, but I just thank God that he's still alive. He's still got his faculties. It was my birthday a few months ago and he rang me. And I was just like, why are you ringing me? It's your birthday, isn't it? And I was just like, I was like, oh my God, like you've had brain damage, you know what I'm saying? Out of nowhere. So I don't want to get emotional, but I just want to say thank you for just beautifully researching that. And that was, to me, to the point. It was my family's experience and my brother's continued experience. And just thank you for doing the research and putting it on paper so eloquently. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. That means so much to me, honestly. I'm kind of lost for words to like express what that means, but that really means a lot to me for you to say that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for writing it. I appreciate it. Sophie, did you have a question?
Hi. Maybe 2 comments really and a question. So the first comment I'm going to make is, so recently over the last 20 years, you know, every program I've watched about LGBT or gay love or red, it's not like it's bestial, but it's a lot sexualized, you know, and in a way, self-sexualization of the gay culture. And it's nice that was the things that I've saw. I'm sure it's not all the same, but what I liked about your book is that it actually was a love story, and it was talking about feelings that are universal and really showing the truth of what it is to be in love, you know, and how love is the norm, you know, and we all experience it the same way, and we all have those different type of relationship, which is a bit maybe not awkward, or maybe do we love each other? How much do we love each other? Whatever. And this is something that I feel is not portrayed enough when representing queer characters, or especially gay men. And so that's more kind of my view. The other thing as well is the intersectional of being a gay man as well. I have some like gay male friend, and they always tell me that they find it really difficult to find a place because their experience is there's a lot of racism in the gay scene as well, and they're fetishized a lot and over-sexualized a lot. And I think when, you know, it's all well and good when you're young, you want to be hot and proud and you want to be loved or whatever. But when you're getting old, are those people going to be there for you? Are going to be the one that's going to look after you if you're sick? No, it's going to be your parents. It's going to be your family. And I think sometimes those men are asked to kind of ostracize themselves from their blackness or their family because they're gay. And in a way, I find that as bad as being, you know, homophobic, in my view, you know. So that's my two points. And I just wanted to say that the bit I really liked about your book was the fathership UK. and how he was coming to terms with his, I don't know if it's toxic masculinity, I don't know, but the whole storyline with his uncle and how he was struggling with, first of all, the fact that he saw that he was gay is amazing in itself, because no one else saw that. So that showed that he's already had kind of maybe an understanding of that. And maybe he was born to have a gay man, just a gay son, do you know what I mean? But he kind of put that aside and just went with the norm, which is like, no, I want to get what I want and I'm going to destroy this man, and living with that consequences all of his life. So I really liked how, you know, how people are portrayed or seen as homophobic is never black and white, actually. And we can all be like that in the wrong circumstances. But yeah, I just, that's not really a question, but that's just how I felt.
Thank you so much. I think you're 100% right, and you really picked up on something I was really trying to get across. Excuse me, get across with this book, because I think, I'm not a prude, and I've read books with sex in and gay sex in that I really like, and I know that you're not coming at it from that kind of prudish perspective either. Like humans are sexual beings, and writing about sex is good, and actually maybe we probably should talk more about sex. But also I think that sometimes in representation, certainly of Black men, we are over-sexualized and we are fetishized, and that kind of places emphasis on some parts of our humanity at the expense of others. And what I was trying to do with this novel was to do something a bit restorative. I wanted to kind of say, I really believe that Black queer men deserve that kind of epic love story, and that sex is, and that doesn't mean that it's asexual, or that and doesn't mean that it has to be exclusive of sex, or that we don't talk about sex. But I thought what I want to talk about is the feelings that as Black men that we do have, and I want to celebrate that. One of the big things that's different for me from my first novel to my second was that with my first novel, I had a slightly different, maybe slightly less defined vision of what I was trying to do as a writer, and I was trying to demonstrate that single parent families are human families, and that I was trying to demonstrate and prove that, and demonstrate that all sorts of things to do with being queer and being a person of color are true. And now I'm past that with this novel. I thought I'm not interested in proving anything to people who are resistant to equality and liberation. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in celebrating what I know is true, and that is one of the things I wanted to celebrate. The fact that Black queer people do experience love, and that we do share these feelings, and that we can have these epic love stories in real life, and that deserves celebrating. So that was what I was trying to do in this novel. So when you talk about the role of sex in this, that really chimes with me. And I think, my goodness, talk about racism and homophobia, and yeah, the way that somebody else I think earlier on commented on, this idea that when you're Black and gay, you're often kind of trapped in that way between homophobia and racism. And I think that's true in this novel. And I was trying to get across with, the white men that the two characters date, which is probably why some white readers don't like this novel, are both kind of awful, because as much as they are, they're human beings, all the characters in this novel make mistakes, but I was more, and I was more interested in giving the space for redemption to Ekene and Chibike and Achike, because I wanted, this is their time to heal. The characters Oscar, who dates Ekene earlier on in his story, and Achike's agent Julian. These are two white men who, they're very different white men, but they're
powerful, rich white men.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's a huge power imbalance there, and they both fail the Black men in their lives in certain ways. And I wanted to explore what it's like not to be like the guilty white person, but to be the Black person whose world is partly that, even if it's just a small part, even if that's just temporary, even if it's really kind of just a footnote in some ways in their lives. I wanted to explore what it's like to live with that sense of failure, and to move on from it, and to heal, and to exist positively, hopefully, in a world in which that takes place.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm mindful of time because I only lured Okechukwu here for 30 minutes. But has anyone got any final questions? Because this guy, he was on BBC yesterday. He's out here in Hollywood tomorrow. So this is your last chance, guys, on Zoom, innit? It was throwing it out in the world. So is anybody who felt a bit shy? Yes, Colleen, go for it.
Not shy, but yeah, I think I just put in two things really, and I think I liked the fact that you kind of threw in the sexual abuse there. I think that's another taboo in community where, you know, it's ignored or people turn a blind eye to it. So I like that element, but also like I feel like I could, these characters were so real in my mind that I could see it on stage, and I'd love to see that on stage for sure as a play. I think it'd be really, really powerful. But yeah, just again, I feel honoured to have been a part of this as my first book group, and thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. That is amazing to hear. I couldn't ask for anything nicer. Thank you.
Is that on its way? A stage? Okay.
I mean, I hadn't planned it, but I like the idea. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
I think Jane had a question. I mean, the greatest gay love story I know was Queer as Folk, man, back in the 90s. Stuart Jones, man, and his best friend. That to me got me riveted. Like, I didn't even care back then. I had to like sneak out when my parents were asleep on Channel 4 at 11 o'clock at night to watch it. Like, you know, you're just scared, like, please, my parents are going to watch it. But to me, even though, yeah, it was very graphic, it was just more about, is Stuart Alan Jones going to get with the guy, his best friend or not? That was all I cared about. And I fancied Stuart Alan Jones as well. But anyway, Jack, sorry.
We all did.
Weird, isn't it? It's a curly hair. He was a bit of me, really. But anyway, sorry. Focus.
Thanks. So yeah, I just finished the book literally about an hour ago. And I feel like I've come back from a really good holiday, and I'm trying to remember back on all the parts. I really, really, really enjoyed it, and I loved the themes. But first of all, I didn't realize until Liz said that the book has just come out. I thought maybe this book had been out a while. I was just wondering, how did you find putting it together? Because I listened to the book on audiobook for my first time ever listening to it on audiobook, but there's just so many themes and so many different parts to it. Like I feel like if I was to explain it to somebody, they would expect the book to be way, way longer. And it just felt like such a smooth read. And yeah, it's kind of reminding me now, listening to everybody else's questions, but it's kind of mind-boggling now to think that all that came into that book, and it was so smooth. Usually I can get a bit impatient reading, and there's always a couple of times in a book where I'm kind of like, oh, hurry on, or, you know, I wish there were parts that actually are very fast that I hoped would be longer. But I thought that this book was just so smooth to read, and I'm just interested to see how you found the writing process, given that your last book came out not that long ago in 2019.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say. This book was my experience of writing my second book. This book is very different from my experience of writing my first one. Like I kind of touched on earlier, how with my first one I had maybe a less of a clear vision. Certainly earlier on, I had less of a clear vision of what I was trying to do, and it just also took me a lot longer. It took me 8 years to write my first novel. I was writing it on and off, and I was working full time and as a teacher, so there just wasn't a lot of time to write, and so I had to take long periods without being able to write. But I kind of had to come to see what I wanted to do with the book over several drafts. Whereas with this one, I think because I got the idea for this book halfway through writing my first one, I'd had that kind of seed in my mind for years before I actually got to sit down and write it. So even though I didn't actually write the first word of this until I finished my first book, I think my mind must have been dwelling on it, which is why, it was still hard to write, and there was still a long period where I thought, am I going to be able to actually pull this off? Am I going to be able to write this in a way that's even convincing to me, never mind to anybody else who's going to read it who I haven't met? But then there was a point when things kind of seemed to fall into place. And I think, as writers, we often talk about like inspiration, and we talk about it, we kind of mysterize it. We kind of make things kind of mysterious. And we kind of make them seem like, I don't know, like divine or like, but actually I think the reason that things kind of fell into place with like the migraine and the reincarnation and like physics and all this stuff, like, was because I was just always thinking about it. I was obsessed with this book, like from the minute I started writing it until well, till now. Like, I was just constantly thinking about it. And so as I was just like, literally, I would wake up in the middle of the night and like make notes about, oh no, this, I have to do this. And like, oh, and then, you know, or no, this character needs to do that, or say this, or have this conversation, or have this experience. Or I was like, and I think it wasn't easy, because I was like having to come to it over, like, it took me 2.5, like nearly 3 years to write this book. And so it wasn't easy, it took time, but things did kind of fall into place, because I didn't take a single sort of day off or like minute off. Like, even like in the middle of the night, I would be like writing down ideas. So yeah, I think it just happened like that.
Thank you so much. To the end of your time. I mean, I did wonder if you would answer the question I posed right at the start, which was which has been the most transformative experience for you, platonic or romantic love?
That's difficult. That's really difficult, because that's a really difficult question, because there are relationships of both kinds in my life that have really changed me and changed my life, that I'm really grateful for, and I couldn't choose one over the other, definitely. But I also think that they work differently, in that, like, platonic relationships, I feel like they just know that, you know, the two kinds of relationships, they nourish you in different ways, I think, even though they've got lots of things in common. And that is important for me to recognize, that different types of love are often very similar and they're very connected in certain ways. But also, I think sometimes romantic love is something that you have to kind of grow towards. And so is platonic love, really. But, you know, it's this idea that I think you have to sometimes, it's not just about being ready to give and receive love, but it's also about being at a stage where you can articulate love in a way, and I'm not expressing this very well. I think for whatever kind of love it is, but I think often especially romantic, because society places quite strict ideas on what romantic love looks like, and, you know, in terms of like monogamy and having kids and getting married and all of that stuff. I think that a lot of the time you have to kind of go on a journey before you realize what you want and what is good and what is best for you. Whereas in platonic love, there are maybe less strictures for it. I don't know, but I think that maybe for me, the transformation takes place a lot of the time before romantic love and through platonic love.
Thank you so much. I'm just really shocked. Helen normally has like 10 quotes that she wanted to read out to author. Like, Helen, what's happened? Are you so enamored?
I don't know. I just kind of echoing everybody else. I just absolutely love the book, and I just feel like it was just so beautifully written, and the story was so sort of devastatingly sad as well. And I think I said it to the group just before, the bit where they recount in Berlin, I was just sort of so heartbroken, because they're just so desperate to love each other, but like Akene doesn't feel like he's deserving of it, it just made me really sad. But I think it was just a really beautiful story between them.
Thank you so much.
What's next for you? What's next? Hollywood? Here we go. Now the whole film synopsis, that sounded sick. Like, it needs to be a film.
I agree. Yeah, Hollywood needs to get on this. My phone's not ringing yet from Hollywood, but fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm writing a third novel, and I'm really excited about it. It's Black British characters again, and I'm really interested. It's a different, very different story, very different characters, and really different setting, and it's just really exciting to be doing something new. And I can feel that kind of like obsession starting already. Like, I've got this notebook that I'm already filling up quite quickly with notes on like what the characters are, like the backstories and their lives and their motivations. It's this really exciting like stage when you're just getting to know them. And I've just got so many ideas of things I want to write. You know, it's about, I want to write like a non-fiction book, and I've got an idea for a young adult book and all sorts. But it's about like, I want to do one thing at a time, so that I don't, because I'm kind of like a magpie, and that if I allow myself to get distracted by something, I will just like drop the first project and never see it again. And then, you know, so yeah, for now, third novel.
Okay, I've put first dibs in 2-3 years when the next book's out. You're gonna swing back back here, yeah, hopefully. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Yeah.
Can we
Thank you
have
so
a-
much. I'm really grateful for you inviting me here. It's wonderful.
Did you grow up in church? You're so humble. Like, honestly, the humility is godlike. I love it so much. Honestly, you flex, like you've written some amazing books, and sometimes you just got to flex on your skills. I'm sure it's not like your name. Doesn't it mean God's gift or God's portion or something?
It does, yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does mean that. And but yeah, I did grow up in the church.
Yeah, the humility. Can we just have a photo, just a fangirl? Is that all right? Can we just fangirl with you with our books? So guys, put your books out. I read mine on an ebook, so.
Oh, mine's downstairs. Oh.